Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to have a little bit of a look at, well, the ban list. The ban list, which is about to get an awful lot shorter than it is right now. You see, the news has officially come down, and it's a little bit more expansive than we thought it was going to be. The news has come down, removal of cards from banned and restricted lists. Since the game environment has changed, 7 cards will no longer be banned or restricted as of December the 8th, 2023. Now, the reason for that is incredibly simple. OPO5 is coming out. And now it's important to note that our ban list and Japan's ban list have actually been quite different for a while now. We are, and I'll get more into this in a minute, but we are basically tightening up with Japan, and Japan had OPO5 with what is going to be our new ban list, and it wasn't a huge problem. Like, Red was good. Red is doing very, very well. I'm not saying Red isn't good. What I am saying is Red isn't oppressively good. And that's kind of the point. Over in Japan, in the OPO4 meta, which is the one we are in right now, basically the only decks that made the finals of big tournaments were Rebecca and Newgate. Now, if you look at smaller tournaments and bring them in, then there is an argument Rebecca was not actually that good. But if you look just at the results of big tournaments, which are always going to hold more sway, Rebecca and Newgate were the two big decks. And you could see the argument, although Japan never did what we did to get rid of Newgate, but more on that in a second. In OPO5, Japan has had the same meta, and Newgate is good, but it's not a problem. Purple Luffy in OPO5, very good deck, seeing a bunch of play. But the best deck in OPO5 is Sakazuki, and it's been incidentally proven over and over again that the best deck in OPO5 is Sakazuki. Now, Japan have actually moved on to the OPO6 meta since then, so everything's kind of standing still for the minute in terms of the OPO5 meta. Japan has left, we haven't got there yet, so no more changes can be made, but Luffy is good, Enel is good, Sakazuki is ridiculous. Do you want to know what happened in the last tournament, the last big tournament in Hiroshima in Japan that happened right before the release of OPO6? Do you want to know what happened? Well, the winning deck was Sakazuki. The runner-up deck was Sakazuki. Sakazuki took first and second at the last big event in Japan before the release of OPO6. The bans that we are reversing were not in place for this tournament. Red was not nerfed for this tournament like it is over here, and yet it was Sakazuki, blue and black Sakazuki, that went and was the best deck in the meta. Red is not a huge problem. Now, it is good. Newgate is an absolutely good, viable deck in Japan right now. Not saying it's not. What I am saying is, in the OPO5 meta, Japan did not have the restrictions that we have had up till now, which are about to be reversed, and Newgate did not dominate. Good deck, viable deck, very arguably a tier 1 deck, but not a deck that needs to be brought into line. Now, there are two that are not being reversed. Moby Dick and Kabaji are staying on the ban list. Alright? They are still banned, and as it stands at the moment, they are not coming off. Which is interesting, of course, because they are the only two that were banned in Japan. They are still banned in Japan. They are staying banned over here. One thing that does, which I find extremely important, brings us into line with Japan. It means that our ban list and Japan's ban list are now the same. I'm still slightly weirded out by Kabaji. I'm not sure that Nami would be broken with Kabaji, but Kabaji is banned to stop Nami running away, and Moby Dick is banned to stop Newgate being too good. Everything else that Newgate lost, Newgate is getting back. Moby Dick is not coming back, and to be fair, that is a stage that if you got one or fewer life cards, your Edward Newgate and all your characters with Whitebeard pirates gain 2,000 power. Yeah, that is broken. Like, Gabaji, I can look at that and go, well, that would make Nami better, but is it really going to make Nami broken? I'm not sure. Maybe it would. I'm just saying I'm not sure. Whereas Moby Dick, I look at it and I'm like, you cannot print that. I have no idea how Moby Dick got printed. The idea of your leader and all your Whitebeard pirates all getting plus 2,000 power. Like, Roanoa Zoro is a good leader. This is double Roanoa Zoro and affects your leader as well. Moby Dick is a ridiculous card. And as time goes by and I play more and more of this game and we see the meta evolving, every time I look back, I remind myself what Moby Dick does. I'm like, that's absurd. How did they ever print that card? Do not expect this one to come off the ban list. This is just silly. So they're still on the ban list. And look, we got a World Championships coming up. And we're going to be playing against Japan. The West and Japan, who have different releases and all of that, are going to be playing together. One of the questions I had about this was, what were we going to do in terms of our meta and Japan's? And the answer is, don't worry about it. Now, we still need the question of whether OPO 6 is going to be legal, because OPO 6 is out in Japan now. It is not going to be out for us by the time the finals happen in Tokyo in March. We are not going to have OPO 6, and Japan is. My prediction, and it is only a prediction, is that we are not going to have OPO 6 legal, because the way I see it, everyone's got access to OPO 5, everyone has had experience in the OPO 5 meta, only Japan has had experience of OPO 6 and has access to OPO 6. So the idea of holding a tournament of World Championships with OPO 6 legal, where some of the players live in territories that have had a chance to play with it and can get it easily and some don't, that doesn't make any real sense to me. But they have gone and fixed one of the problems. What are we going to do about the fact the ban list isn't the same? Well, the ban list is now the same. Moby Dick and Gabaji are banned. That is the entire ban list. And we are now on the same footing as Japan. So what's gone and happened then? Well, both copies of Marco are no longer restricted. They were both restricted to one copy. Both Marco are now available to be played as much as you like. We've got the original one, which was the first one they took action against, the one from OPO2. That is the one with blocker, and on KO you can trash a card with a type including Whitebeard Pirates from your hand, and if you've got 2 or less life, play this character from your trash rested. So basically it's a blocker that keeps coming back. And actually, to be fair, the whole keeps coming back thing does fit beautifully with Marco's character in the manga. Speaking of Marco and coming back, we've also got the one from OPO3, which on your turn, when you play it, you KO one of your opponent's characters to 3,000 power or less. And on KO, you can trash an event from your hand to play this character from your trash rested. So again, a decent character that keeps coming back, and one that if played on your turn, can actually come in very, very handy indeed. Both of those were restricted to one copy. It's now back. Speaking of Whitebeard Pirates, you'll be delighted to know Edward Newgate is no longer banned. The leader, Edward Newgate, was banned. They literally said you can't play this leader anymore. He's back. And this makes sense, right? End of your turn, add a card from the top of your life to your hand, 6,000 power, 6 life, ridiculous card, was ruling the metagame. And there are differing opinions as to how good this was, whether it needed to be banned or not. And yes, I agree. There are some people that think this card is ridiculous and had to be banned. There are other people that thought it was good, but not good enough to warrant a ban. The one thing I hope we can all agree on is this was a ridiculously good leader that was doing ridiculously well. And even if we don't agree with the ban, we can look at it and go, yeah, you know what, that was actually everywhere and kind of being a bit of a problem. Fine, I get it, although I don't agree with it. Well, now that one's back. And while we're here, the Edward Newgate character that was restricted to one copy per deck is also back. You can now have as many as you like. You can have 4 jobs are good at. And this is a phenomenal character. And this actually is a pretty big deal because on play, one of your leaders gains 2,000 power until the start of your next turn. And then you cannot add life cards to your hand using your own effects during this turn. Very relevant if you're playing the Newgate leader. Less relevant for other decks. And then it's got 10,000 power and Don X2 when attacking KO of 3,000 power or less. This is a card that sees, or saw before we restricted it so hard, a lot of play in non-Newgate decks. So this is one of those cards, and Marco, to be fair, we could say the same thing about. It is kind of cool that we are getting this one back. People are going to be happy. So all the Whitebeard Pirates are back in their entirety, and that's rather lovely. But the other red stuff is back as well. One of the weirdest bans was Nami. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a Straw Hat other than Nami, add it to your hand. The reason why, incidentally, Nami got banned was because there are more Straw Hats, and more good Straw Hats than we generally see in other types. So decks like Zorro and Law were everywhere taking advantage, and it was given too much consistency, making those decks too good. The reason why the ban was weird is because in OP05, we're literally getting a reprint of this card. It's one of the special rares. And in Starter Deck 10, we're literally getting a reprint of this card. So to ban it while then giving us 2 reprints of the same card was a little bit weird. But don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, the ban is gone now. The ban can't hurt you. Only Nami can. So Nami's back, and that's rather lovely. And then they just kind of kept going and kept bringing everything back. Curly Dadan, very similar kind of card to Nami, except on play you look at the top 5 cards of your deck and find a red character of a cost of 1 and add it to your hand. And there are lots of good 1-cost red characters around at the moment. This was another one of those cards that just gave a whole bunch of consistency to red decks in a way that allowed them to dominate. And that was essentially it. Red was doing too well and having too much success, so now all of a sudden they took it away. The other card that was restricted a while ago at this stage was Radical Beam. That one is also back. This is the 1-cost counter plus 2,000. But if you've got 2 or fewer life cards, it's actually a counter plus 4,000, or a trigger that gives leader or character plus 1,000 during this turn. It's basically a very low-cost card, which can give you a big impact in terms of countering and staying alive. It was giving red a bit too much juice. And you'll notice all the things taken off the list are red. Red got a massive nerf over these ban lists, and now that is just being taken away. Now, red's back. But looking at the OP05 meta in Japan, this shouldn't be a problem. Red's still going to be good, like I keep saying. Red's still going to be played. But it's not going to be this oppressive deck taking over everything. Because, honestly, in the OP, and I cannot tell you what's going to happen over here, we might approach it differently. But I'm telling you, over in Japan, Sakazuki was an absolute monster in the OP05 meta, so that is something you need to bear in mind. So there we go. And now the ban list is actually really easy to keep track of. It's Kabaji and Moby Dick. That's it. That's the entire ban list. They are still banned. Moby Dick, I hope, never comes off the ban list. That's way too good. Kabaji, I'll be honest with you, I would love to have one tournament where we unbanned that just to see how nuts Nami went. That'll make me happy. For now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think about all of this, so let me know in the comment section. Go nuts! Be nice! And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about One Piece and a bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all kinds of fun things. But by far the most important thing is always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching Wasi Plays.